Welcome to episode 240. Today I'm interviewing author C.L. Lowry about his post-apocalyptic thriller, The Scavenger. Stay tuned. Today's episode is brought to you by the Shelf Addiction merch store. Check out all the bookish t-shirts, notebooks, mugs, and more. Don't miss out on these original designs, perfect for any book nerd. Support the podcast and visit shelfaddiction.com/merch and pick up your next favorite bookish item. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and welcome to Book Chat here on the Shelf Addiction podcast. Here on Book Chat, we get bookish with roundtable book discussions, recommendation lists, interviews, and more. Be sure to check out shelfaddiction.com for even more content. Before we get started, let me tell you a bit about today's interview guest. Chris McLean, otherwise known as C.L. Lowry, is an award-winning author, a graphic designer, a speaker, and a writing coach. Chris writes adult fiction under the pen name C.L. Lowry. He's written 3 books under his pen name, which include a crime anthology, a post-apocalyptic thriller, and a guide to self-publishing. As a writing coach, Chris has helped over 25 writers self-publish more than 50 titles. If you'd like to comment on something you've heard during today's episode, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Shelf Addiction. The links for everything related to today's episode are below in the show notes. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Thanks for coming on today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to talk about your book, The Scavenger, because that is something that I have not, it's in the genre that I have not had on my podcast in a long while. So I'm excited for something a little different.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So first, let's start with a little bit about you. So, usually writers read as much as us readers do. So what have you been reading lately?
Lately, I've been checking out, I've been reading The Client by John Grisham, going back and forth with that and Helldivers by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. So just different, 2 completely different genres, but just it depends on how I feel that day, which one I go to.
That's awesome. I actually do that too, because I read more than one book at a time.
Right.
So when I do that, I make sure they're like polar opposite genres so I don't confuse the situations.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So do you have like a favorite author or a go-to author that you just auto buy whenever there's a new book?
For me, I would say I got a couple. James Patterson, whatever he puts out, I'm getting. Even the book shots, even the collaborations, I'm getting those. Tom Clancy, Ashley and Jaquavis Coleman, anything they put out, I just buy them and have them sitting here. I got a lot of their books. I actually have their whole collection, and some of them, half of them I didn't even get through yet, but they're so good that I gotta have them. I'm definitely going to get to them soon.
Okay, so you definitely have that stacked up TBR shelf, because I know that life.
No, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what books or authors you think that have influenced your writing style. And I'm going to assume it's going to be James Patterson, or no?
I would say a little bit, but not too much, because I'm actually in law enforcement. So a lot of my style, even when I came out with my first book, a lot of people were like, it's so descriptive. It's like you're there. And I think that comes from report writing and coming from crime scenes and having to describe things and testifying in court and things like that. So a lot of it is just my original style. Even when I read, I definitely try not to pick up anything, because because people expect that from me. People expect the description and the scenes, and especially like firing a gun and going through a house, like searching a house. They expect that description to be very detailed from me. So I can't really say that it's influenced by them. I don't know. I think it's like completely original for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's actually really cool, because I gotta say, not a lot of authors say that. They usually say, a laundry list of authors, but that's really unique that you just, did your own thing and you didn't feel influenced, which is that's good, I think.
I guess like how we do it, keep going back and forth between books, is kind of hard to actually pick up little tidbits from each person's style when you keep going back and forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's jump into the book we're here to talk about today, and that is The Scavenger. So tell me a little bit behind, what made you want to write this book?
The Scavenger was actually, I released my first book called The Black Badge, and I had a small publishing company reach out to me. They wanted to include me in a post-apocalyptic dystopian sci-fi anthology with 8 other writers. So it actually started out as a short story because I honestly, that James Patterson, Tom Clancy, that type of genre, that crime thriller mystery, that was like the genre I wanted to dive in, especially with my law enforcement background. So sci-fi wasn't really on the radar for me in terms of writing. I like reading it, but it wasn't on the radar. So when they reached out to me, I took it on as a challenge. So I pushed myself, started writing a short story. I think they wanted it less than, I want to say around 10,000 words. So when I was getting to 10,000, I'm like, okay, the story's not even where I wanted to be at. It's so much more detail I need to put in there, obviously, because that goes back to the writing style with my descriptions. And then I was over 10,000. I emailed them back and I said, hey, I'm over 10,000. Is it a big deal? They're like, no, just try to keep it under 12 now. And I couldn't. Literally, the story just took off on its own. And I discussed it with them, and I ended up keeping it for myself and releasing it independently because it ended up turning into a full story. And then obviously I had an idea to make a series out of it. It's probably gonna be a trilogy. So that just tells you how much I was into this story when writing it.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you thought up the story, did you have this kind of tucked away in the back of your mind and then you said, oh, I'll put it in this setting? Or was it like, oh, I have to do something post-apocalyptic, so now what am I going to do? How did you think up what you wanted to do?
Oh, it was straight from scratch. I was like, I literally did that. I said, it's post-apocalyptic. What am I going to do? Let me think about some things. I know I didn't want to go into the zombies, that version of it. I wanted to do something different, a different type of creature, a different type of beast. But even still, my writing style and some of the things I touch on in my other books, I still wanted that feel to it. I still wanted somebody to read and be like, oh yeah, this is him. Even at sci-fi, even the people that like my crime fiction, they could reach out to this and read this and like, oh yeah, it still has that good feel to it. So one of the things I did, I said, what's different about science fiction? Science fiction, it literally takes you to a different world. And whether it's in the future, whether like even with this, the post-apocalypse and the world ending and things like that. So I said, what's different about it? And I started thinking about some of the genres and TV shows that even like including The Walking Dead. That's the first show that came to my mind. And I was like, for me, everyone gets so united. It seems like everyone forgets about the problem they all had, and all of a sudden we're united. And sometimes, obviously, you have different groups. Like just to go into The Walking Dead, you had the group that was with Negan and things like that. So you had the villains, quote unquote. But I wanted to take it to another level and say, hey, how can I include today's current problems into the post-apocalyptic world? And that's kind of how I started developing the Scavenger. And I was like, and that's why it took off on its own, because I'm like, yeah, let's take it that way in terms of like the protests. We have protests going on. So how can that affect going into a world when suddenly everything's ending? You know what I mean? Those feelings just don't, I think we've been pushed enough as society that we can't just have a us against them mentality when it's coming when we're talking about a force, an outer force coming in and being a threat to America, which it was in the Scavenger. I took a different approach and I said, hey, let me just keep the same energy we have now in society with the police brutality, the riots, the racism that's going on, and incorporate that into this story. Now it's going to take a different spin. So now, not only do we have to deal with the apocalypse, we still have to deal with these pockets of people that even if you're going through this world, when you come in contact with somebody, you don't know what's going to happen because we still have those stereotypes and things like that. So I wanted that. You know what I mean? I wanted that in that story.
It sounds very volatile, right? So you got to deal with lack of food, lack of resources, and deal with crazy people on top of it.
Right. So you'll come into it and say, hey, like even from a racial aspect, If it's a black person going up to a group of white people and you see Confederate flags, they're still about that heritage that I can't even approach this group in the back of my head. You know what I mean? So, and then I'm desperate. I don't have anything to eat. Just throwing out an example, and I can't even approach this group. What do I do in this world? You know what I mean? Where do I go? Who do I turn to? So that's a little bit of that.
Okay. Well, we've touched a little bit. We've touched the plot. Why don't you tell us more about the Scavenger? Don't spoil anything, but tell us kind of like high level what's going on in the book.
So basically what's going on in the book is, like I mentioned, the protests, the police brutality, all that stuff is gotten out of control. It kept boiling and kept boiling, and that was overflowing. And they incorporate martial law, which has no effect. It's still getting violent. Crime is at an all-time high. So the government had the bright idea to, hey, after the curfew, anyone out, we'll consider them a threat. So we use this gas. So they're like, at this point, they're desperate. We got to get rid of the threat. They're looking at everyone as a threat to the government who's out after the curfew, who's out after martial law. So they release this gas that ends up wiping out half the population and then causing mutations as well. So it was kind of like the government attacked his own people on his own soil, and then now we have the remnants of that, and then everyone has to fend for themselves to survive.
Oh my gosh. So was that an accident? Like they didn't mean for that to happen? Or was it like, hell, this is what's happening?
It was kind of on purpose. They didn't know. They were desperate. So they didn't know what effect it would have. They just had a theory that, hey, if we put in this martial law, anyone that's out past the curfew that we put in place has to be a criminal or has to be a threat. We had to gain control somehow. So that was the only, it was quick and it wasn't well thought through. So they just did a desperate move and it didn't work out.
No, I mean, they kill half the people. No, it didn't work out. I don't know, unless that's what they wanted. So let's talk a little bit about your protagonist, Kyle Quinn. Tell me about him. So he's a Marine, but, is he more than just a Marine? Let's dive into him a little bit.
Kyle is he's a Marine, so he still has that. He was a captain in the Marines, so he still has those leadership qualities as he's navigating through this new world and trying to find a solution. He kind of prepared for it. He was one of those people, and I'm sure we all know some of those people that keep talking about the end of the world. You got to be ready, got to load up on ammo, you got to do those type of things. So he was kind of a realist in that aspect, and then he's just trying to figure out how to navigate through this new world, and obviously to protect himself, to protect his family, and then people he comes in contact with. You know what I mean? So those leadership qualities he learned in the military, and obviously those skills he learned in the military, help navigate him through this new world in order to stay alive.
Mm-hmm. So what do you like best about Kyle's character?
I like the leadership. Because when you take some people with those type of skills, the skills he has in terms of marksmanship and shooting, in terms of the survivalists in them, a lot of those people can be selfish. You know what I mean? They'll either, it's just me, survival of the fittest. Let me just fend for myself in this world, or they can say, hey, let me get some people that are like-minded and have the same type of abilities as me, and then we'll group together, and then it's us against everyone else because they're not ready. But he's not like that. Like I said, he has those leadership qualities. He has a good heart. He has a kind heart. So he's there to help. So that's one of the things I like about him. To say in this new post-apocalyptic world, in the humane world, he still has humanity left in him. So that's one of his best qualities, I think.
What about on the flip side? What do you like least about his character?
The thing I like least about Kyle is probably the same strength is probably his same weakness, because as we know, sometimes helping everyone can be a setback. You can be too trusting. You know what I mean? Some people just aren't meant to survive, and they can actually hold you back. So how does that affect you, and what situations does that put you in? And that's kind of some of the things that happen in the book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned that he's like trying to protect his family. He's a family guy. And the synopsis mentions his wife briefly. Are there a lot of, secondary characters as far as family and friends and things like that? Or is he kind of just solo trying to save himself and everybody he knows.
Well, he's trying to protect his family. The secondary characters that we get into, I would think, are Micah and Adina, and I'll focus on Adina right now at this point because she is a character that I wanted as soon as I started the story. I was like, we need a strong Black woman as one of these characters that that wows you once you open a book and once you start reading. So that's what Adina is. You can call her Kyle's enemy, but I look at her as like Killmonger from the Black Panther. They're they're quote unquote the villain, but are their ways really villainous? You know what I mean? Like Killmonger really wanted to help people in the Black Panther, and Adina's background, she wants a new world. So depending on who you are and your personality, you may look at her as a hero, and depending on who you are, you may look at her as a villain. So that's what the type of character she is, and she is nothing to play with. She is in it, and she's in it to rebuild this world under a new regime ran by her.
But Kyle sees her as like an opposition to what he's trying to do.
Yes, and I think what's interesting is I think their characteristics in terms of leadership, they have a lot of similarities, but due to certain events and incidents that took place, it puts them on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of them working together and things like that. So if they met in the different circumstances, I think they actually will work good together, but unfortunately they didn't. So they're rivals.
So who's the villain then? So who's the real villain? Because I feel like Adina she's more like the anti-hero, not like a real villain from what you're saying. So is there one that they're both fighting against, or is it just the government? Is the government the villain?
No, it's actually, for this one, the real villain comes afterwards. It's actually going to be in the second book. Mm-hmm. For now, I would literally have to say it would have to be her. It would depend on how you look at it. It depends on some of the ways she goes about things. If you agree with them or not.
I have a feeling I would like her.
Oh yeah, I love her.
Like straight up. Like if you've ever heard any of my like past podcasts about The Walking Dead, I am like very harsh about some stuff. I swear, I feel like I'm like that girl. I feel like I would relate to her for some reason.
Yeah, but she's a villain in some ways. Yeah. But is it for? And some people say, is it for the greater good? What she's doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it's to each his own kind of thing. Like different people deal with things differently. Exactly. So, absolutely. Okay, so I am a huge audiobook advocate, and I am glad to see that The Scavenger is also released in audiobook.
Yeah.
So tell me how you went about finding the perfect narrator for this book.
So finding the narrator, I used the Amazon's company, ACX, and it was brand new to me. My other book wasn't released in audio, so this was a brand new process with me. So I started getting the auditions. So I had no expectations. I know I didn't want the monotone. I heard some books, like even Ashley and Jaquavis, one of their books for the Cartel series, it was like the guy was in monotone. It literally was losing me. It just reminded me of the Clear Eyes guy from the Visine commercials. So it was losing me. When you have their series, the Cartel series, had so much action in it. You couldn't even get into it because of the way, just the format of his style of reading. So I knew I didn't want that. So when I went into the auditions and I started looking at the styles, the preferences you can pick with male, female, accent, no accent. It was just amazing. I was like, oh wow, this is like crazy. So I picked versatile. A versatile for the style preference, and even still, I still had no expectations. So I just waited till the auditions came in and started listening to people actually reading the story, which is a whole different like experience. You know what I mean? So actually hearing someone else read your story and you're listening back to it, and it's crazy. So that's when I ran into Rudy, and he was the only one. Some of them were versatile, but they still had their voice, you know what I mean? So whatever voice they were reading in, they changed the style of the voice, but the sound was still the same. He actually got into character for the story, for the sample, and I was like, he added. So once I heard that, I shut it down. I was like, this is it. He's the one. You know what I mean? I knew all the
Yeah,
magic.
for sure. Yeah, I was listening to the snippet on YouTube, and guys, I will have that in the blog post if you want to take a listen yourself. But yeah, when he changed into like the female characters, you could definitely tell how he, without going falsetto, which I hate,
Right.
he was able to soften his voice and kind of, you could tell he was changing characters, from that point of view without sounding ridiculous. So I mean,
Right.
and so he's did a good job from the 5 minutes that I heard. I mean, I never heard him before, but he sounds really good.
Oh
I
yeah.
liked it.
And we actually have a character in the story that's a little flamboyant, but also witty at the same time. So when he touched on that character and nailed it, I was like, oh my gosh. Like that not only that, I was happy because, okay, he's reading it and it's making sense when the way I'm describing this character, that he picked it up, but for him to pick it up and nail it like the way he did, it was perfect.
Yes, that's awesome. That's a real professional. That's a pro who can do that. Because honestly, narrators can really elevate a book, and it can mess up your book if you don't pick right. So,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was listening to the clip, I heard some additional sounds going on at the beginning of it. Does your audiobook have additional sounds beyond the voice,
No, I actually edited
No.
those when I was editing in the promo clip for YouTube. I think it was gunshots and cars screeching and things like that. Just give it a different effect so people just gain some attention when they're looking at the clip. So no, it just has the audio, no additional sounds in the actual audiobook.
So is there anything else you want to share about the Scavenger before we move on to our next couple of questions?
No, I would just say it's a different twist. Like I said, it's a different twist to it. I get a lot of great feedback from readers that haven't really touched the sci-fi genre. Like I said, I'm easing you into it with a lot of realistic scenarios that are going on now and implementing them into the story. So I think it's good. I think we got a lot of good feedback. Definitely want people to come check it out.
Definitely. The links for all of those things that I mentioned are going to be in the blog post, you guys. So just feel free to click that from the show notes and you can find the audiobook, the ebook, and all that good stuff. So Chris, let me know, do you have any interesting feedback or advice for authors that may want to write a book?
I would just say get into it, get into writing and get into becoming a published author, get into this profession for the passion of it. So it will continue to drive you even through disappointment, through the ups and downs of this industry. You know what I mean? So once you get into it, just keep writing, keep the passion going, and just work hard. Never give up. I see a lot of writers, which is disappointing. A lot of good writers too. A lot of good writers that are independent that just are putting the pen down for a little bit because of the lack of support and things like that. And some of the stories are amazing. It's heartbreaking to see. So just make sure I just tell people, just stick with it. It's going to be ups, it's going to be downs, but make sure you stick with it. You have a core base of readers that are expecting your work, that like your work, especially children's authors. I'm a children's author too, that you have children out here that want these stories, that deserve these stories, especially the ones that have representation of them in it and diversity. So just keep writing through the ups and downs. Just make sure you keep writing. That's my advice to them.
All right. Great advice. Okay. So what's on your agenda next? Are you working on the next book in this series or are you doing something else right now?
I'm actually at the end of this month, I'm releasing an urban fiction street lit story called King of the Streets. It's a different twist. I just wanted to dive into the urban fiction realm a little bit, and I have began. So that's done. The cover's getting completed, the formatting and everything for that book. So that's probably released. I'll be in Ohio, the Ohio Kickback Book Expo, October 20th. So that's why I'm going to release it in person. So it should be around that date. I'll post on my website and social media the actual date of the release. So that's in the works. And also I did begin writing for the Scavenger 2. The second book is called The Scavenger Hunt. It's based around Kyle as well, based on the ending of the first book. I actually want to do a different approach to this book, which is going to be, it's a little weird. It's a little new to me. I just thought I did. Do you watch Power?
No, I don't watch Power. And everyone tells me I should. I am so behind on that. I don't know why.
You had to. So at the end of Power, I don't know how many people do it, but I know if you're a writer, I'm sure you've probably done this. So the end of Power, the writer Courtney Kemp, she explains the themes in each episode, and I like live for it because you have some themes you won't even pick up unless you writers pick it up. Like, oh, they keep mentioning family. I don't remember the one episode was all family, 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 family. Like each character when they played it back, it's kind of like the Talking Dead, like the afterwards, but she explains the themes of the episode. Like each character said family, and you wouldn't even notice it unless you watched her. So I kind of wanted to do something, and she also mentioned like different endings they thought about going for different episodes, and it's like, oh damn, I thought this person was going to die, and to hear her say we thought about killing off this character, but it just didn't work. I was like, oh my gosh, they were thinking what I was thinking. You know what I mean? So I thought that was real cool that like me as a viewer and a consumer is like kind of like mentally on the same page as the writer, like even with how the story should have went. So I kind of want to do like a vlog series of that for the Scavenger hunt, like from the beginning to the end that I'll release once the book comes out for obviously all the fans of the Scavenger, so they can actually see the process and hear all of the different avenues or ways I was going to take the story and you know what I mean? Just a little different twist, something different. I thought that'd be cool.
I actually really think that's a real unique idea. And I love it because I love like little social media things thrown in to like supplement the book.
Right.
It really would, entice more people to read. And if the fans, they would get even more of what they love on YouTube or wherever. That's really a good idea.
So I just thought about that because people were like, I made the mistake of saying that it was coming out this year because I planned on writing it and releasing it this year, but this other project came up, and so the fans are like, when I posted online, the Scavenger, writing for the Scavenger has begun. I just got all these comments saying it's about time and we've been waiting for this. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna take a different twist to it. So like one thing, and I think this one is going to be real intriguing because I touched on a lot of those things I talked about, the protests and things like that. I touched on it in the first Scavenger, but now we're going to dive into some of these groups that even when we look at today's society, some of these hate groups and some of these, we're going to dive into them. We're going to introduce some of these groups into this new world, this post-apocalyptic world. So you can kind of get an idea like, so if the world ended today and we got all this hatred, this is kind of how it would be. You know what I mean? So I think
if the world ended today, I think we'd all be crying like kids. We'd be so upset. Like, oh, it's dreadful. So anyway, like, look, don't open that can for me. I'll just go on a rampage. So we're going to end that there. Awesome. So do you want to do the lightning round?
Sure.
So let me tell you a little bit about it in case you don't know. I have 60 seconds. I have a bunch of questions, and the goal is just to answer as many as you can. Some are book related, some are not. Some are open-ended, and others require you to pick one or the other. So the only rule is it's kind of would you rather style. You must choose. You can't say neither or both. You have to choose.
Is there a record? Did somebody have the record for the most questions answered?
No, you know what? I should start counting so I can see. But I swear, no one gets more than like 11 or 12. It's crazy. Most people get, 11 or 12 actually is a lot. I don't know. I should count. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Physical books or ebooks?
Physical books.
Hero or villain?
Villain.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Bookstore or library?
Library.
Android or Apple?
Apple.
Vodka or gin?
Vodka.
If you could pick one superpower, what would it be?
Super strength.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Windows or Mac?
Windows.
Cliffhanger or realistic ending?
Cliffhanger.
Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Name a book that you've read in one sitting.
The Throne by Cole Hart.
What's your favorite food?
Jamaican food. Jerk chicken.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl. Whew.
If you could read only one genre forever, what would it be?
Urban fiction.
All right. And time's up. Yay. Actually, let's see. I can count. You got 15.
Nice. So they better step it up. They better come. I'm ready.
I'm gonna mark it down so I know for next time. Like, last author got 15. What can you do?
I got the record, so they better come forward.
Yes, awesome. Well, thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. So everyone, be sure to follow Chris, aka CL Lowry, on social media. You can find all the links in the show notes and pick up a copy of the Scavenger while you're at it. If you want to reach out to him, you now know where to find him. So thanks again, Chris, and it's been a pleasure.
Definitely. Likewise.
All right, that's it, guys, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Happy reading. Take care. If you enjoyed today's book chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcast and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.